Welcome to Podheim, Jiroc's Valheim podcast. Let's give them the business.
Hey everybody, today is January 19th, 2022. I'm your host, Jiroc the Viking, and joining me today are my fellow Vikings, Gwen the Shield Maiden.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Viking Rudy, Rudistic the Guardian.
Hello, friends.
And Viking Thorin, aka Metaroon.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Remember the first time you saw that innocent-looking little bug flying around in the plains? You probably thought to yourself, oh hey, what's up, little guy? Then bam, it gave you the business. Well, we're going to do the same thing today. First off, a few quick announcements. The reminder that we release new episodes of this podcast every Friday on YouTube and hopefully your favorite podcast app. If you can't find us on your preferred podcast platform, please send me an email at jiroctheviking@gmail.com and we'll try to get it added. It's now the fourth server I've launched, and when you sign up, you'll get access to all of my other servers. I also have a new cinematic teaser trailer on my YouTube channel that shows some of the things you'll encounter in this new server. It's pretty exciting stuff. We're also here on the new server at one of the hand-built locations. What do you guys think? Does anybody recognize this location?
I've never seen it before. It looks pretty wild.
I don't recognize it, but probably because I'm inside it. I teleported straight in, but maybe if I walk around, I can see we're in the deep north, but there's trees around.
Yeah, what about the building? Do you guys
it
recognize?
Looks familiar to me because I built it.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yeah.
Do we say it or?
Well, so what I will say about it is that this is one of the buildings from our main server that has been basically ruinized. You know, it was a beautiful, beautiful building on our main server, and I took it and I used a mod to copy it, and then I made it look like old ruins and stuck it here. So for the listeners, you have to, check out YouTube if you want to see it, or, when you get on our server, you'll get to play in it.
Wait, is this the BSC castle?
No.
Oh, Gwen still doesn't know.
Good try.
Oh, is that the Great Hall?
This is the Great Hall. Yes.
Oh, it took me a while.
Yeah, so this is what happens, at the Great Hall on our main server after a few thousand years go by. This is all that's left.
Wow.
So this new server, Jiroc Survival Playground Season 1, the fourth server I've launched, this one's going to include new admin-built locations to explore, like this one and many, many others throughout the world, including a little bit of building up in the Ashlands and in the Deep North. We also have mini bosses spread throughout the world. They're in the form of enhanced enemies that are already in the game. So we've taken enemies in the game and beefed them up, added armor to some of them and weapons and shields. Pretty cool stuff. We have interesting POIs all over the world. We have new mythologies to discover that you can explore on our Discord server if you're really into the role-playing stuff. We have new artifacts in the form of weapons, tools, and armor that are crafted from our expanded mythology, and each will be a higher level than what you can currently craft in the game, just by a little bit to make them, really, really something, valuable. And then best of all, there's no mods needed for the client side at all. You guys don't need any mods to play on this server. The server will run for 2 to 3 months, and then we'll actually start the next season.
I want to say that cinematic teaser trailer you made for this survival playground, amazing. Everyone, you got to go over to Jiroc's YouTube and check out that video. It is very cool.
Yeah, it's super well done. You can tell your filmmaker background just looking at it. The action shots, they're so good. I was like, wait, is this the same game that we've been playing? Because it actually looks like a proper trailer for a game, like not just a server. It's, great job on that.
Yeah, perfect teaser for all the new content. You get to see some little snippets of what you can experience on the full server.
Yeah, and actually the original trailer, that one's just a little over 3 minutes long, and then there's another shorter trailer showing a little bit more that's about a minute long. So yeah, check those out on my YouTube channel. So today we also have a special guest coming on later in the show. His name's Nick Rawcliffe, and he did the Valheim Vegan Challenge videos. So stay tuned for that. Okay, next we're going to do some news, and Thorin's going to start us off with our first news story.
Yeah, so this has been kind of a reoccurring topic for the last few podcasts, but the results finally came out for the Build for Baldur competition that the Iron Gate developers held over the holidays. So they announced 3 winners and then a number of honorable mentions, excuse me. And yeah, first of all, just want to say congratulations to the winners. Everybody did a great job. They look awesome, and thanks to the whole community for participating. There were a lot of really excellent entries. The 3 that were selected, the first place was by, I believe, Zug Life was the name, and it was kind of this cozy little castle, like nestled up on a hill in the Black Forest. Just had a lot of nice little interesting touches, not too large or anything like that, just felt very kind of cozy and mystical, straight out of a fantasy book or something like that. So makes sense why Baldur would want to make his home there. And then second place and third place were taken by Snow Crash 9231 and Shalty Brim. The first being a pretty awesome bridge and kind of tower build also in the Black Forest, where you kind of sail home and you come through your big towers and your bridge, and it kind of welcomes you back to your base. And then the last one was another kind of castle/cabin manor build inside of the Black Forest as well. Pretty quaint, but looks very cozy. So you can kind of see where the Valheim devs were going with this, I think, where they wanted something that was realistic and cozy. They weren't necessarily judging based on grandeur or novelty or anything like that. So yeah, I can totally see why these ones won. They're all great builds. So congrats to you 3. And in the honorable mentions, that's where our 2 builds ended up for our server. So unfortunately, we didn't take it home, but at least we made it in there in the honorable mentions. So we had an Asgard build, if you haven't heard yet. That's kind of modeled after the Marvel universe. I've got a bunch of build videos of that on my channel, Metaroon. So if you're interested, definitely take a look at that on YouTube. But yeah, that one came out very well. And then we had another character on our server, Dipstick, who put together like a PC workstation login screen kind of thing. It's very cool. You kind of have to see it to believe it. And even then, it's still pretty mind-blowing. But yeah, glad that both builds were able to be recognized in the honorable mentions. And yeah, finally, just want to say, thanks to everybody in the community and to Iron Gate for putting this on. I hope they do more of these in the future. It was really great for the whole community, and it was a lot of fun to participate in. So we'll definitely be on the lookout for more of these build competitions in the coming months.
Yeah, for sure. It was great fun to build this as a team, as a community build. But also just looking at all the incredible submissions, it must have been so hard for the team to judge and decide on winners. There was so many great builds. Like even in the honorable mentions, I look at it and like every single one is outstanding. So yeah, well done everyone. Great effort.
Yeah, the first and second place houses / castles, keeps, strongholds, whatever you want to call them. I love the way they look, and they actually make me think that I want that house to live in the game. If the builders of those make the builds available somewhere, that would be amazing, or the map for download, because I'd love to explore more to see I'm sure there's all kinds of nice details on the inside, but limited to 4 pictures. They couldn't post all the cool details, I'm sure. So would love to see what the insides look like. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about our favorite things in Valheim this week. And Rudy, you want to take us into that?
I'd be happy to. So yeah, last week we talked about our favorite moments in our favorite game here. So this week I thought we would talk about our favorite food. So to all of us here, what is your favorite food? And what are you always rocking for food in your inventory? Gwen, I'm excited to hear your answer on this one.
Obviously, ice cream. No explanation needed. It's ice cream.
Eyeball ice cream.
It's eyeball ice cream.
Don't ruin it for me. It's ice cream, and it's shiny as well. It's ice cream.
Yes, us decorators do enjoy the ice creams, that's for sure.
It's so pretty. Not only it's ice cream, and that's like I love the play on words as well. It's really cool, and it's finally a thing that you can use Grey Dwarf ice for. The thing that you always have tons and tons of, that once you've built all the portals that you can, like, you don't really use Grey Dwarf ice. So I love that they actually made it useful in that way for crafting or for making this food. And it's just such a nice item. It's beautiful. It's this and the black pudding, because it's also got a few like little a bit of glowy stuff in the black pudding. No, it's not black pudding. Sorry, the black soup. What is it called? The one that looks in a bowl, and it's really dark. It looks like chocolate, and then it's got like blue stuff and glowy stuff in it.
Yeah, that's a soup.
Yeah. Well, that one is really pretty too. I like them both because, yeah, they're a little bit different from the other foods.
And you can't go wrong with that 65 stamina, am I right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I mean, I actually cherish my ice cream. I don't eat it. I feel bad eating it. I survive on honey most of the time, and the ice cream, I just like, I just enjoy having it in my inventory, but I feel bad eating it.
And we definitely put an ice cream on the table in front of you for today. You are allowed to enjoy that one, Gwen. Please chow down anytime you feel you may need.
Thank you. Yeah, I like the contrast though, because everything else is kind of very yellow and orange. So yeah, I like those two items because they have a bit of a different color to them.
Oh wait, it doesn't even require blueberries. What are the blue things? It takes
It's
blood bags,
blueberries,
honey,
but
and
it's
turnip.
magical. I know.
Blueberry garnish.
Yeah.
And well, what about you, Thorin? What are your favorite foods, and what are you rocking in your inventory?
Mine are a little boring because they're real life foods, but I love them in real life too. I'm a big builder, so I don't necessarily need like max level stuff, and I usually just go for the most economical stuff. So I love myself some French onion soup in real life and in Valheim. I wish it could be real French onion soup, but we need cheese. Call back to Gwen's comment from earlier in the episode.
Exactly.
Yeah, we need lox milk and cheese so I can make myself a proper French onion soup with some bread as well. Yeah, also a big fan of bread in the game. Usually my staples when I'm building are onion soup, bread, and sausages, just because they're also easy to come by and pretty good stamina food. Nice, well-balanced meal.
Pretty easy to farm too, for the most part. And Master Jiroc, what is your go-to foods?
Well, so wording it as, what are your favorite foods? I just remember back when I first started the game and running around, you have to make foods, but there are things you can just eat directly. And before they changed the foods, mushrooms had much higher stats. I forget exactly. Was it more stamina or more health? One of the two. And it was just such a great food because it was like a food you could get for free by just running around. Like I didn't have to go and cook anything. I didn't have to chase animals down that would run away and you'd end up chasing them for several minutes. But mushrooms are great because you could just, as you're running along, I never passed up any mushroom patch. And then every dungeon I went into, I'd pick every single mushroom. And then the bonus is mushrooms make fun decorations, but the yellow ones, especially because they glow. So I would end up using those as little night lights on paths and things all over the place. So kind of serves two purposes. It was like an easy early game food that you didn't have to like go out of your way to make. And then it was also doubled as a great decoration during the day and at night.
Yep. Mushrooms and honey, the lazy man's diet.
Yeah, I ate a lot of mushrooms and honey. Honey was my second choice if I had to go number two.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where honey, as soon as you have your own little beehives, it's like infinite food. It produces like 4 a day or something. And yeah, once you have a couple of them, you can have like pretty much unlimited honey. And they give quite a lot of stamina for something that is quite easy to come by. And yeah, I pretty much, I'm not joking when I'm saying I'm surviving on honey. Like I rarely have food in my inventory if I'm just walking around not doing anything special. I only stock up on food. I'm very economical with food. I only take really what I need, and I always end up like having to beg other players if we're in a really long fight to feed me because I didn't plan enough and I didn't take enough foods.
On the battleground, Gwen's running around. I'm famished. Somebody help me.
I'm hungry. Yeah, and I'm the same as you, Jiroc. I think it took me a while to actually realize that you could craft or like cook foods more elaborate than just the stuff that you would just cook on the basic cooking station. So for the longest time on my solo play, on my first playthrough, I would literally just eat the stuff that I would forage, and the occasional meat. Meat was like the grilled necktail and the boar meat and all of that was like special treat for if I'm preparing to go do something that requires a bit more. But mushrooms.
No wonder those trolls gave you such a scare. You're trying to get adventure on the weakest food.
Exactly.
A genuine question before I answer this for myself. Honey, would that be allowed in the vegan challenge?
Well, technically no, because it comes from an animal, so no.
You can't steal their honey, man.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I myself, I have the serpent stew in front of me here on this table. I love the serpent stew. I love the means of getting the serpent meat. It's one of my favorite parts of the game is being on the seas and hunting serpents, and then that 80 HP. You can't go wrong with 80 HP. So yeah, serpent stew, and I'm usually always rocking bread and ice creams as well. But yeah, that's my go-to. I love the serpent stew, and the fish wraps too are actually a close second.
Yeah, the fish wraps are cool, but didn't you feel like the first time you saw them, I just felt like they were really out of place because they look like wraps that, modern wraps, and everything else is a lot more like Viking and historical based. And then there's fish wraps. It's just weird.
Yeah, they remind me of a Greek gyro or something. They're a little out of place.
Or a burrito.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say this too, if the blood pudding didn't cost, I think it's 4 blood bags per unit. If it didn't cost that much, I would be rocking that all the time. I love the blood pudding, but it is very costly to make.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that one, just aesthetically, because it comes on its own little plate. No other foods do. And that was interesting. I like using it on tables as decoration more than anything because it's got that little detail. And it's got a little leaf as garnish too. It's really pretty.
And if you need a lot of stamina and to do a lot of running, if you rock the bread, ice cream, and the blood pudding, you're looking at I think it was 240, 250 stamina.
Wow.
You can run a long ways.
Well, cool. I also wanted to talk about some of the things that we'd like to see, maybe changed in the game because, nothing's perfect, not people, not games too. It's a pretty good game, but there's always little tweaks that could be improved. First off, I'll just say that I do love how simple the interface is. It really helps with immersion. It's one of the reasons I loved Minecraft so much is because they really minimize the interface. You don't see numbers all over the screen and little boxes with text and, having, a good portion of your screen taken over by the interface. And then when you open up menus, there are games where you open up menus like Grand Theft Auto 5. Like I loved the kind of the gameplay elements, but the interface just turned me off so much. I just could not really get into it. So I love that. But, and I love the fact that there's no armor slots for you to drag your armor into. I just love that because that's just another interface window to clutter up the screen when you open up everything. It's just all in your inventory. And you can sort it how you want to the perfection. But let me get into what I would change. When you open up the crafting menu or to upgrade an item, like say you make a new sword or a new piece of armor, when you upgrade an item, you go over to the upgrade section on the tab and you select the item and then you hit upgrade. If you have a whole bunch of things in your inventory, everything in your inventory is listed in that thing. And so the selection, if you're on, say, the bronze sword and you upgrade it, the selection jumps back to the first thing on the list. So I have many times upgraded the wrong thing, wasting the few materials that I've had, been disappointed because I was looking forward to the next level of that item, then have to go out and forge, or collect more resources for it. Or even worse, I would run out of materials upgrading something and then I would go back to the crafting station once I got the materials and open it up, select the item that I want to upgrade, not realizing that I didn't switch the tab, and I would craft a new level 1 item of that, wasting all my resources. I wanted to cry like in real life a few times. I was just like, no, I spent 2 hours collecting those resources and I just made a new weapon instead of upgrading the thing that I was about to. So if they could make it so when you upgrade something, it doesn't select the first item over and over, like if you're wanting to do multiple upgrades, and somehow to really clearly differentiate between the crafting menu and the upgrade menu, because I guess I'm just so much in a rush that sometimes I didn't pay attention to it. I've lost so many resources. I'm not the only one, by the way. I've talked to other people who have done that.
Oh, yeah. So
Yep.
many times.
Everybody has. Another alternative solution I would like to propose, though, is I would love to see them add the ability to break down armor and weapons that you've crafted into the original, even if it's for like a lesser amount of resources or something like that. Like there's some economy there, but to be able to break down old armor you're not using anymore, or stuff that you accidentally crafted rather than upgrading, that kind of thing, it'd be really nice. I know the obliterator was kind of an approach to that, but we don't want to throw away that stuff. It'd be nice to be able to recollect the resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what would you want to change then, Thorin?
So I also love the simplicity of the UI, and I actually really like how they've combined your action bar with your like backpack or inventory. Not a lot of games do that, and I think it's it's quite an elegant solution. Particularly when you don't have like skills to use or something, it totally makes sense when all of your things are items that you're equipping or consuming. To play devil's advocate to your comment, I love the interface, but I really wish we had armor and weapon slots. Coming from like such a classic RPG background, it's something that's really missing in my opinion, and it almost breaks the immersion. Like I consider my inventory to be like a backpack on my character, even though we don't see that on our character model. And so it's really odd to me to have equipped items inside our backpack. I see that as like a separate, my body is like a separate thing that I should be equipping stuff to. Maybe that's just, the many RPG games that I've played burned into my mind, and I know it's not as common in the survival space, but I love the equipment slots mod, and would like to see him add it. I don't think they will ever add it, but I am kind of on the opposite side of the fence for that one.
And Gwen, how about you? Is there something you want to change?
Yeah, one of the little things, not a huge deal. I mean, I think I talked a little bit about it last time. I'm big on decoration. I think me and Rudy, we were the same in that way. We just love decorating and using all the items, and that having the item stands and being able to attach stuff is so cool, because it really allows you to do a lot more with that, and making your builds not just look like shells, empty shells, but really transform them into like cozy homes that for your character and things like that. But I would say there are a few little tweaks that would make the item stands even more better. Some of it is what I spoke to last time around, like when you place them with the yellow placement box, it's really hard to see and be precise in the way you rotate your item stands, which can be a bit frustrating sometimes. They are also very resource intensive. The fact that that tiny little square thing costs as much in Finewood as a full-on chair, there's a bit of like maybe they should not cost like 4 Finewood, because you burn through Finewood really quickly as soon as you start trying to decorate stuff. The other thing that I know a lot of people are keen on, and we actually on our server use a mod for that, is being able to place any items on item stands, or at least a little bit more items. Some items I understand that it doesn't make sense, like some plants, like you shouldn't, in real life, you can't really just place a thistle or just a plant, like not in a pot, but just standing on the table. It just doesn't make, like the physics of it doesn't make sense. So yeah, those things, maybe they shouldn't be allowed, but it's just weird that some items you can place on item stands and some others you can't. And there's also inconsistencies. So like, for example, even not vanilla without using a mod, you can place a carrot on an item stand, but you can't place a turnip. There's a few inconsistencies that are just a little bit, a few things that could be changed so that it gives more options for people like me who like to play vanilla and who enjoy decorating. Yeah, that would be the one that I would call out for this week.
Cool. Yeah, I know that's really big for the decorators. I've mentioned it many times in other videos about the item stand all items. Yeah, maybe not all, but definitely there's so many that look great on an item stand for decorating. So, Rudy, how about you? What would you change if you could?
Well, one thing I love about the game is its perfect mix of game type: building, battling. If you want to hit up the bosses and do some battles, it's good for that. But if you want to build and be creative, it's good for that. So for like myself, someone with ADHD, it's one of those perfect games. But something I would change is I've been having a lot more fun lately with the ooze bombs. I'd like to see a few more grenade or bomb type weapons, or just any items like that. When you're going up to a falling village and you throw an ooze bomb at him, it does make the job a lot easier. So, yeah, I'd like to see some more bombs, or anything like that, right? Anything that's not a physical, or not like a weapon, but it's something else you can use in your battles and stuff. And I definitely agree with Thorin as well. There, being able to break down weapons or stuff that you build that you no longer need, and getting those materials back. That would be very cool as well. But I see why they didn't do that, because it's kind of maybe a way around of moving metals around. How you can't go through a portal with a metal bar, but if you make a whole bunch of, let's say, level 4 iron pickaxes, that's what, 120 iron or something like that. That's how you could transport it across. So I do see their reasoning behind it. But yeah, it would be cool to break down items that you have built.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about being able to break down things. Like especially running a server, I'm always trying to look for sinks, like money sinks, resource sinks. Some games, especially MMORPGs, try to balance their economies by introducing things that are going to take stuff out of the game, because there's always so much generated by the players that you kind of crash your economy, and not giving you back resources from the armor and weapons that you have, by sort of like recycling them and then getting some of the resources back. It's sort of a way to sink and get rid of some of the stuff so that you don't have too much of it and you get bored, because you have everything you need, and you just get your materials back, or at least a portion of them. So it forces you to go out and get more. But then there are people who don't have as much time to do the grinding, and they just want to do the sort of adventuring or whatever it is. But it's kind of it's a balance. It's tricky. I'm not even sure what the solutions are there. I've tried introducing a few things on our server to be a gold sink, and it's still kind of a work in progress. But yeah, there's maybe some balance there too. Maybe even like a tenth the resources back. I mean, like most things don't cost 20, 30, 40 pieces, but I mean, weapons and armor do, because you craft them and then you upgrade them, so there's can be hundreds of materials in there. So maybe getting a tenth back, or some portion, maybe isn't a bad idea.
I think that's definitely a fair statement for sure.
Hey everyone, this episode is sponsored by Gportal. They host all of my servers, and I have to say they are pretty awesome. If you're looking to rent your own gaming server, you can save 5% if you use my link in the description. And if you're interested in some really cool Viking jewelry, things like necklaces, rings, bracelets, and even some Viking clothing, check out vkngjewelry.com and use code Jiroc for 10% off. Link in the description. Okay, we have a special guest on with us right now. His name is Nick Rawcliffe, and he's known for doing a pretty cool video on YouTube you might have seen. And if you haven't, I definitely recommend that you jump on over and check it out, called the Valheim Vegan Challenge. And Gwen is going to ask some questions for us. Gwen?
Yeah. Hi, Nick. Welcome. Great to have you.
Hi guys, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, so Nick Rawcliffe, you're a YouTuber, a streamer, and a world record Valheim speedrunner as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and kind of what got you onto doing Valheim speedruns and challenges?
Yeah, sure. I've actually been kind of pursuing content creation for quite a long a long time now, like about 6 years or something. So it is a long story. I won't bore everybody with all the details, but basically, you know, as certain events unfolded in my life, I was unemployed and not doing too well health wise, and I just wanted to pursue something I was really passionate about during that time. And as I was, you know, got better, and you know, I always experimented with tons of things. I did a lot of Minecraft content for a while. I was like just doing like Minecraft hardcore and stuff, but I never felt like I was that good at games or anything like that, or like I never actually was a speedrunner. And then like this is going to be weird for a lot of gamers listening because it's completely different genre, but I kind of got addicted to PUBG at some point, and I was focusing on that as a content creator for a long time. And what I realized playing that game, just from putting more hours in, I just got sort of slightly better and better. And I was eventually asked just by a fellow streamer to play in a tournament with him, and I was quite surprised because I kind of felt like I sucked at the time. That is kind of where I started trying to actually get good at games, I guess. And again, like I don't know, I was never that confident, but that kind of led to me pursuing trying to play competitive PUBG, and I played in a few tournaments. I wound up kind of representing the UK in a I forget what it was called now, but I think it was a GLL like Nations Royale where I played on the UK team for that. And honestly, it wasn't that much of a big deal, but it just put me in this headspace of trying to be competitive at something. And I played in a lot of the EU Open qualifiers to try and make it to these big tournaments where you could win lots of money. And, you know, we did well in some of the games, but ultimately, like, never really qualified for any big thing. And I would do okay in like smaller community tournaments. And I just got burnt out on the game, and I found like the competitive environment to be a little bit stressful and stuff. And I've always loved survival games, and Minecraft's like one of my favorite games. And actually, two of my favorite games are Minecraft and Oblivion. And people in my chat was basically telling me that I would love this game called Valheim when it was very first released. And it kind of, when I looked into it, it sort of looked like a bit of a love child of like Minecraft and Oblivion in a way.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, right.
That's a good comparison.
Right. Yeah. So when I was seeing this game, and I was a little bit bored of what I was doing content wise, I was like, oh, this is like, it looks like it's made for me, this game. And so I just started playing casually, just for fun, like everybody else, just discovering Valheim for the first time. And in my spare time, I had already thought about, because of my sort of esports experience, maybe I could actually figure out how to speedrun it. I had no idea how to do it or anything, but I just, having gone through this crazy experience, it's so hard to, like, some of those tournaments when I'm trying to qualify for big European tournaments, they're like, you are playing oftentimes against pro players that have signed contracts and stuff like that. And it's so challenging. I felt like I might not be good at any other games, but like I already started out not being good. Maybe I could do this again with speedrunning. So I watched some tutorials and some Minecraft speedruns initially. And I was trying to learn how to speedrun Minecraft. And I just kind of dabbled in it. I never managed to do a successful run. I didn't stream it. I didn't make videos. I was also doing the same thing for like some old Resident Evil games as well, because I was a huge fan of those. Like I said, I was curious, but I never really saw myself as a speedrunner or anything.
You just kind of fell into it.
I just kind of fell into it. But when I was playing Valheim just for fun, because I'd spent time watching these tutorials and these guides on Minecraft speedrunning, I just kept seeing kind of like similarities. And in my head, just as like a fan of gaming content, I was thinking, I think like trying to do a similar thing with Valheim like could be really fun. And I just kept playing through casually. My first playthrough was like a 250 hours just casual playthrough. It's building cool stuff. And by the end, I kept expecting more Valheim speedruns to pop up. I kept expecting it to show up on speedrun.com. And it just never really did. And I never really did find any Valheim speedruns by the time I was done. And I kind of expected there to be all of these big speedrunners. They've already like got the meta all figured out. They're doing these insane runs I'd never be able to do by the time I just finished my casual playthrough. But because no one had done it, that I could tell at least, I'm sure there was certainly people working on it in their spare time offline, but because I couldn't really see any when it was done, I kind of just felt like, oh, screw it. Like, it'll be fun to just try. And that's
So
how I
you,
really got started doing it.
yeah. So you basically invented the genre of Valheim speedruns and challenges. Is that what what happened?
No, I mean, I would never say that because speedrunning is always a little bit cringe in the speedrun community. Like, it's a bit of a thing. I don't know how aware of speedrunning everybody is, but like, whenever somebody tries to say they like invented speedrunning of a game, it's kind of like, well, speedrunning has been a thing for like decades. You can't really like invent it just because no one else did it. But
Right.
um,
Yeah.
no, I wouldn't. But definitely one thing I was involved with in the early days was the New Game Plus sort of random seed glitchless runs, where I was sort of trying to beat the game, where I could bring a character with as much gear as I wanted and just focus on killing the bosses as fast as possible. That was kind of an area that I definitely was a little bit more kind of thought up by me. But other Valheim speedrunners did pop up quite quickly in the early days, and we kind of got together and agreed on rules. And I was the original person that got the game on speedrun.com. Like, I was the first runner to submit to them and get that approved. But with anything with speedrunning in general, it's kind of like there's always lots of gamers working in the dark trying to figure it all out. It's hard to say it. Any one person's responsible. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So what's your current time, your record, and what category, like for a full playthrough?
My current PB, I'll have to bring up my own speedrun.com profile to tell you it all. So my current PB, for like doing all bosses with a fresh character and a random seed glitchless since Hearth and Home is 8 hours and 16 minutes, and that's the current world record
Wow.
on this patch. But I do have a load of world records for all different categories. I can't remember exactly how many. But yeah, still some of the world records from before Hearth and Home are still standing as well. Like some New Game Plus ones. I think I currently have the record for New Game Plus post Hearth and Home as well, and got some multiplayer world records with some other speedrunners. But yeah, the main one I'm obsessed with right now is the starting completely from fresh on the latest patch. It's like can be torturous, but it's kind of why I love it. It's so satisfying.
Yeah, it feels like that's the pure and true way to do it.
Yeah.
It definitely is. I mean, it's actually, this is kind of interesting, I guess, because in the early days of Valheim speedrunning, like very early on, no one was really beating the game in much shorter than, I don't know, like let's say 10 hours or something like that. And even like, I think my first New Game Plus run where we're actually taking gear in, I think that was originally, the first world record I had for that was still over 8 hours, I think. And so, like, the reason I ran New Game Plus so much in the beginning was because I was more concerned about people getting bored watching my live stream and stuff like that. Like, I felt that it was possible to get that down to like less than 90 minutes. So people get to see like multiple world record attempts during a live stream. But then over time, you know, people like shout out to Archie and Onion Knight. They're two speedrunners as well. That was super important, especially in the earlier days of this game. And they really like figured out a lot of stuff too for the more pure like fresh character run. And now it is short enough. So I guess basically what I'm saying is it totally is Thorin, as you're saying, like the most pure kind of category, but it was so rough to run in the early days that I'm only just at the point now with strats and knowledge that I actually am cool with doing it on a live stream. And even now, with it being 8 hours and 16 minutes, the amount of time I'm up till 6 in the morning because I just have to do another run is just crazy. But yeah.
Yeah. And so how do you proceed to like prepare for those challenges? There's, especially as you were saying, in the early days it was much harder. The game was new, so you had a lot more to figure out. Like, how much prep goes into each challenge and each run?
A ton, really. In the early days, I just, like I said, focusing on New Game Plus was important for me because New Game Plus is a category that you can throw yourself into without having figured out a ton of strats. It's still extremely difficult to get a world record time in it, but that I personally, the way I like to learn things is throwing myself in at the deep end. You know, like sometimes I won't necessarily do all the research. I'll just throw myself in at the deep end and do it, like looking at what other runners are doing and chatting with speedrunners in a Discord. And there's even a spreadsheet floating around somewhere of strats that have been figured out by other speedrunners. This was all important in the very early days, but the most important thing was throw myself in the deep end with New Game Plus to kind of like learn by doing it. And then really with the challenges, specifically the challenges, because they're quite a lot different to a speedrun, it was stuff that just I accumulated the knowledge and the strats from doing speedruns that made me comfortable with doing challenges. And it was kind of stuff like really in so many games, particularly if we're talking about single player stuff or like PvE stuff, getting a world record in a certain speedrun category might be the hardest thing you can do in some cases, even compared to a challenge. So when I first started out, like the first one I did challenge wise was Valheim in reverse. Part of it was just that I'd kind of accumulated this knowledge that, like, here's an example, like bringing it up in the chat, the idea of beating the game in reverse. People would say things like, you know, unless you're going to clip into a crypt, it's just not possible to get the withered bones. But because I just put so many hours into the game already, I'd found withered bones in chests in swamps already, like, you know, a few times, and I knew that they were there. It was just rare. So that's like an example of just, you slowly accumulate this knowledge, and then I'm just figuring out like, oh, if you fit some of these slightly lesser known things about the game together, you could do some kind of challenge. And then it becomes a cycle, because I wasn't comfortable doing this sort of fresh character, sort of more pure run I'm doing now, actually, until recently, like until really after Valheim vegan challenge, because the vegan challenge, because the rule set I created for myself made it such a nightmare.
Yeah.
I was actually more comfortable playing the game with nothing and kind of more comfortable with starting from fresh from doing that challenge. So eventually they start to feed each other. You know, the knowledge for the speedruns helps the challenges, and the huge amount of practice you get doing the challenges helps feed the speedruns.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, the vegan challenge, that was a video that you put out a couple of weeks or months ago. It caught a lot of people's attention. I know a lot of people in our Discord community shared it. We actually have some real life vegans who were very interested in this, because we have often a lot of discussions around food in the game and how everything health-based is very protein-based and so on. What was your biggest obstacle doing that vegan challenge?
Oh, first of all, I'd sort of say that like warms my heart to hear that about people in the community. I love that. The way the challenge came about was actually quite similar to what you were saying about communities discussing food options. And, you know, in my community, I think there's some vegetarians and maybe a couple of vegans as well, where it had kind of come up. Basically, the conversation always started with the food. But then, because, you know, I knew a little bit about veganism for having some vegan friends and stuff over the years, and chat was focused on discussing amongst themselves about the food, and I just kind of thought like, oh, actually, there's a much bigger nightmare than that. If you can't use any leather, you can't use any hide. And to be honest, the biggest thing that made me think this could be an interesting video is that the trick with the cart, which actually is relevant to Jiroc, because I was always told by other speedrunners and people in the speedrun community that there was some strat with a cart, but no one ever found like a use for it in the speedrun. So I knew it existed, but I never really seen anyone do it. And whilst I was figuring out the vegan Valheim challenge, I watched Jiroc's video explaining the trick with the cart. So yeah, that's Jiroc actually had a little bit of a influence on the video. And once I'd nailed that strat, that's really when I felt like the video was going to come together. And even though I knew it was going to be hard, I just knew that all it really was time investment. It wasn't something like skill-wise I was that worried about.
Can I ask you a quick question? Can you, for the audience,
sure.
in case they haven't seen the cart trick, can you explain to them what the trick is and how you used it in the speedrun?
Yeah, sure. So in the speedrun, I wasn't allowed to make a boat because you can't make any hide in the vegan rule set. And so one of the ways that I overcame this was by building a cart by the coast and sort of pushing it into the ocean. And if you jump in the back of the cart and walk sort of towards the sort of wall of the cart, it will actually push the cart along in the sea. And because you are just walking, you actually don't use stamina. So it enables you to sort of walk on water or whatever you want to, how exactly you want to describe it. But basically, you can just move infinitely. And the main thing is just making sure you got to keep your eye fixated on your character's toes. Like I spent an unhealthy amount of time looking at Vera the vegan's toes in the video. Because if they pop out of the bottom, then you're just kind of a little bit stranded. And that did actually happen a few times working on the video on the live streams, where I ended up stranded in the ocean and I had to wait for a big enough wave to come that pushed the cart back down again.
Oh, wow.
Is it other than the card trick that you learned from that video? Is there, by going through this vegan challenge, was there anything like particularly interesting that you learned in the process of preparing or doing that challenge?
Yeah, there's probably a few things. One of the main parts of the challenge that was actually more of a test of pulling off the gameplay and not just knowledge was the modder fight. Getting up to modder is a different story. Getting up the mountain is a separate story, but I'll just focus on the fight for now. But basically, there was again, like I said about there's all these strats that speedrunners have figured out that we don't really have a use for in the run because it's not necessarily faster. And one of those things is when you can dig out kind of a trench around Modder's altar and kind of dig under it. And because the structure of the altar is invincible and mobs can't just destroy the ground, you can actually get a bed under there to be able to rest safely. So you can actually have this safe respawn under the modder spawn. And previously this hadn't been that useful for speedruns or anything. It's definitely a useful trick, though, to anyone listening that wants to play the game casually. You can get kind of a free kind of rest point under the altar. But that came in useful because I was obviously having to fight Modder with just a copper knife. And
bow, right?
Yeah, no bow, exactly. And I knew previously I'd done a kind of weird video where I'd killed all the bosses with like a maxed out flint knife and no armor, but I still allowed myself all the potions and food I wanted, basically. So I'd already beat all the bosses with a flint knife, so I knew it was possible, but the added challenge of like the food being so limited and stuff, basically that modder fight turned into this weird cycle of jumping in this trench under the altar, getting a rested bonus, and then just basically waiting until she landed and getting in as many melee hits. And I kind of had to sort of on the fly, kind of in my head, kind of like work out like how much stamina I needed to do enough damage so that she didn't out heal me. Having this hidden resting point under the altar really allowed me to just keep chaining together rested buffs in the middle of the fight that eventually allowed me to wear it down. But I think I managed to get it down almost perfectly, and even just perfectly where like every opportunity I get and getting the most amount of damage I could out of it, it still took something like 90 minutes to get health from max down to 0.
Jeez.
Yeah.
But that was a huge thing anyway.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have that strat has been around for a bit, but it's been used in more of a cheese way where you just mine your way in there and then you kind of take pot shots with your bow through the crack at Motor, but definitely a little bit more admirable when you're able to hop out and use the knife.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That leads me to another question. What was your favorite or least painful, I guess, boss fight in your run?
In the vegan run?
Yeah.
Well, least painful was definitely Eikthyr because you get to fight him pretty normally, and most speedrunners by this point are just constantly setting him on fire with campfires and stuff. So I think I pretty much did that. I think, to be honest, I enjoyed Modder the most as well because it was really satisfying to kind of overcome that challenge. Because at least that challenge felt like all I had to do was just get better at the game to do it. Whereas some of the other some overcoming like bone mass and stuff, it kind of just feels like torture eventually after there's so many corpse runs where it's kind of like it doesn't really feel like I'm getting better. It just feels like I'm not quitting.
Exercise and patience. Totally understandable. Yeah, cool.
A lot of that.
And since we're talking about the vegan challenge and like how it came about, and obviously ethical living is becoming more and more of a focus in real life, do you think the video games industry will catch up to those trends? And it's more a question to all, I guess. I'm curious to hear your opinions on that. Like, do you think it's the kind of stuff that will eventually make it into the video game industry?
I would think in certain genres, maybe, but like a survival genre. I don't see people being vegan in a survival world, right? When it's the end of the world, you got to get what you can to survive. Yeah, that's where my mind stands with it. Depends what genre or category the game is.
Yeah, I think from like a stylistic direction to or perspective, it would make sense in something that's a little bit more cartoony, like Farmville Vegan Edition or something. That I could totally see that existing. But for a lot of games, there's so much emphasis on like the art direction and like the visceral feel that you get from potentially having some like blood and gore in your game. It really changes the vibe of your game. And for some, if it's missing, the players feel that it's lacking. So yeah, I totally agree with Rudy. I think it depends on the style and the genre.
Yeah, I wanted to add too that the movie industry and TV shows, and it's all streaming now too. When it comes to storytelling, I prefer people leave the sort of the altruism, the messages that are sort of like we have to be, a better society, out of your story, unless your story is sort of focused on that. Like there are the stories that is the focus, and I totally appreciate a good story. So the same for video games. If your video game is sort of focused around that message, that's good. But if it's, some big exciting movie or some dramatic film, comedy, whatever it is, I want to just be entertained. And same with a video game. I just want to be entertained with the immersion of that era, because it's the closest thing to a time machine or jumping into a novel, like video games and movies, right? It's like you're never going to live that fantasy, sci-fi, magic, whatever's going on in there. That's not reality. And most people understand that. They even found that there's really no connection between violence in video games or movies and violence in real life. All the studies that have been done. So I want my entertainment, gaming or movies. I want the immersion, and I don't want your messages, which, obviously I agree with. That's a separate thing. And if the project is that, then I'm happy that it's in the project. I kind of feel the same way with video games. How about you?
I like that take. But me personally, I just feel like there's always more room for pretty much everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I like to see a very not just a cliche kind of like greeting card version of diversity, but like a truly like diverse display of opinions and views. And when it really comes down to creative stuff, like, I want the artists to express themselves in the purest way. And if that means making some game the purest vegan experience, then I'm totally down for that. If that's like a sincere, form of self-expression. And I do also think, just to actually, get to a little bit more about what Gwen was asking as well. Like there will certainly, I expect for there to be a move in particularly like higher budget games to kind of like start factoring in more and more of these things as a sort of form of accessibility almost. You start like there are some games that allow you to like disable spiders for arachnophobia people, and there are starting to be games with like trigger warnings and stuff. And I'm not going to necessarily go into my opinion and all of that, but I do think that a certain amount of it is pretty much inevitable.
Yeah, it almost becomes like an accessibility feature in some cases.
Yeah, that's what I reckon. Yeah, I can see that.
Well, the one thing, I always like to play devil's advocate about this stuff, because as a filmmaker, I've been dealing with sort of the opinions on storytelling and people saying, you should do it this way. And I always say, no, the artist should do it the way they want.
Sure.
just from the devil's advocate side, sometimes having trying to be too inclusive or continue having all these different options, because you see it in some games, like when they try to port it to console, and then the PC experience is ruined because you're playing it with the wheels and the interface that is more meant for console. But it's the time that it takes to introduce all these options to a game or a movie, when the developers' time and efforts should be more focused on the raw content, their vision for the content, rather than trying to be inclusive and adding accessibility features. Like, yes, obviously more is great. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I prefer not to see the actual content suffer because of the inclusivity, but it's, it's a balancing act.
I agree with that. I would just say that, out of the endless bloat and sort of more centralized approach to AAA game development, there's already so much time wasted that I just think it definitely will happen anyway.
Yeah.
I think what Gwen was, getting at maybe a perhaps more sincere approach than the crazy capitalistic kind of like giant companies figuring it all out. But because I do see there's totally room for a cool like indie game market making awesome specific vegan games if that's really what the artist wants to do. But I also see it just being inevitable for the giants of industry to try and cash in on some of the accessibility stuff.
Right. Yeah. And some of it is also like, I mean, just to take veganism as an example, some of it is just like, just making sure that as a gaming studio, you're not just reinforcing cliches of, oh, big Vikings eat meat, raw meat, like Vikings had a very diverse diet and they did eat a lot of things outside of meat as well. And it's like, well, at which point is it just reinforcing cliches versus being too much, leaning into the accessibility and inclusivity? So yeah, it's interesting. Like one of my big requests for Iron Gate is adding foods like cheese. Like, why is cheese not in the game? Like, cheese was a big part of the Viking diet, and it would add so much, and it would like add a bit more options for like the whole thing of, stamina foods are very vegetable and plant focused, where a lot of the health foods are very meat focused. So like part of your vegan challenge, one of the struggles was you had to go full on like everything stamina because you didn't have that many food options for health. So I feel like there's opportunities to, as you said, there's so much that you can do in games and in the realm of video games that you can add a bit of that without taking away from the immersion as well.
And,
yeah.
if they think, vegetables give you stamina, imagine what some kind of psychedelic beer that you would have drank would have been like.
Well, yeah, athletes know that the thing that gives you stamina is carb loading, right? A couple days before the big event, but it has to be a couple days. It can't be like Michael Scott on The Office and a half hour before the race. You pound down the fettuccine Alfredo.
Yeah, true.
All right. That was just the first half of our interview with Nick Rawcliffe. The total interview is about an hour long. And if you're interested in hearing the full interview, you can go to patreon.com/Jiroc the Viking and become a supporter at any level at all. And you get access to the full interview. To close out, I just wanted to give a few interesting facts about each of us to the audience that I'm sure they're, some of them 2, maybe 3 may be curious to hear some interesting things about who we are. I'll start off real quick. I think I mentioned before that I served in the U.S. Navy when I was young. Started at 19, and I served on an aircraft carrier. But before that, what I did in the first 2 years of the military service was going through military schooling to learn to be a nuclear power plant operator. And that was a really, really intense program, the U.S. Naval Nuclear Power Program. But got through that and got stationed on an aircraft carrier, USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN 72. Did that for 4 years. Did a Westpac over in the where we stopped over at the United Arab Emirates and a few places, Singapore, Hong Kong. And we actually were on the way back after the 6-month tour. We were scheduled to go down and stop at maybe Australia or New Zealand if we had the time. but then world events pulled us back away from that, and we missed out. So I have yet to be to Australia or New Zealand. It's on my list. I do enjoy traveling and have been around Europe a little bit. How about you, Rudy? Anything you want to share as an interesting fact about yourself?
Well, I love survival type things in real life. And that's why I think I fell in love with Valheim so easily, is because I love going out. I live pretty close to the Rocky Mountains. So I love going out with just the stuff on my back, a tent, a sleeping bag. You have emergency canned food, but I try not to ever touch it, and just eating what you can catch or trap. It's something that I've always loved doing, and I've always tried to learn as much as I can about it. And just, yeah, being able to survive off the land like so many of our stepfathers did, or our ancestors did, just living off the land. So I think that's, like I said, one of the main reasons I fell in love with Valheim too, is it's a survival type game. So once the spring and summer comes, I'm looking forward to getting out again, and maybe taking some tricks from Valheim and taking them up to the actual mountains here too in real life, and seeing what can happen. But yeah, I'm a big survivalist guy, and that's one of my favorite things to do.
That's cool. I've always been like into that a little bit. I do love camping, both the kind of, you back into the spot with your car, and, where you have to kind of hike in with your own supplies and tent and everything. And I absolutely love like the survival aspects when I watch other people do them on TV. But I've always wondered if like I would actually like doing it myself, the survival stuff. But like watching Bear Grylls or Survival Man has been always fascinating to me, and made me kind of want to do it if I could ever find the time.
Has to be warm though. I could not even fathom doing a survival in where we are now in the deep north, or where it's snowy and cold. I can't even fathom ever trying that.
How about you, Gwen? Do you have anything that you might want to share about who Gwen is?
Yeah, well, I beyond the game Valheim, I always very interested in history, and particularly the past couple of years, I've had an interest in early medieval history, and learned a lot about history of the British Isles, which of course were invaded by Vikings amongst many other other people invading Britain. And yeah, I recently, as in like last year, actually kind of fell into historical reenactment, not Viking era. I am in a group that is portraying 12th century Britain, so more like Norman. The Normans a little bit after the Normans invaded, which is kind of funny because I'm actually French and I live in the UK, so it's kind of like, I'm actually, it kind of fits. And yeah, I mean, part of that is I actually train almost every weekend, and actually hit people with swords and use shields and stuff like that. It's very fun. I have a lot of bruises, but it's a cool hobby. It was one thing that I kind of fell into during the pandemic, because it was when things reopened, because it was an outdoor activity, something I could do, something that was related to history that I enjoyed. So, and there's a lot of different aspects to it. So obviously training and like the combat aspect is one side of things, but I also very much like historical clothing and historical costuming and all of that. I try to sew. I'm not very good at it, but I do try to sew my own gear and things like that. So yeah, that's another aspect of this kind of weird hobby that I picked up in the past couple of months. And it's funny because I actually have currently more Viking related stuff, like as in jewelry, clothing and stuff like that, than actual Norman. So that's a bit of a problem, but I guess the Viking stuff is where my heart is at, just because of Valheim and other things. I've always enjoyed it. But yeah, maybe one day I will make myself a round shield and parade it around in town like a total weirdo. Yeah.
That's cool. That must be. Have you done much cosplay or Renaissance fair type stuff?
So I have. When I was a teenager, I had like a year or two where, because one of my friends was doing it, I did a bit of cosplay. But again, like I just dabbled in sewing, and it was I just mostly did it because I was doing it with my friend, but not so much after that. And yeah, for nowadays it's more, I come at it more from a historical perspective. So I do enjoy, I follow so many YouTube channels all about historical costuming from various different eras, from like Victorian times to all the way up to like, I don't know, early medieval and stuff like that. And I just find it fascinating to learn how garments were made, and because a lot of it tells you a lot about how people used to live in those days and why they were using certain fibers and certain fabrics over others and things like that. You learn so much about a culture that way, and history that way. Like Vikings obviously wore a lot of wool because, as to your point, Rudy, when you're in a very cold climate, in survival mode like they used to have before electricity and heating was a thing, you had to wrap yourself up really warm with clothes that were both practical for everyday working at the farm, but also would keep you warm. So yeah, I just find that really fascinating. But I also love dressing up. Like, I will never pass an opportunity to dress up. Any theme, any costume, anything. Halloween is my favorite holiday for a reason. Like, any excuse to dress up, I will take it up. So yeah, I guess that kind of influenced that a little bit too.
Oh, that's fun to hear. I'm the same way, and all my friends know it. They always say, I wonder what he's going to dress up as today. Any chance to put something fun on, I do. I even like for Oktoberfest, I have the full outfit, and when I grew my beard really big, I had my mustache. I even like did the handlebar curls on with the wax and stuff. But, yeah. And Halloween.
Jiroc and Lederhosen? No way.
Oh, yeah.
No way.
Yeah, we need a photo of
Jiroc the German.
Yeah, I probably have some photos somewhere I could maybe do a little teaser of. But Thorin, how about you? What would you like to share?
Well, on that last point, when my wife first met me, I actually had a big curly mustache as well. Kind of funny. But no, I'll piggyback a little bit on Rudy and Gwen's points. I am also a big kind of outdoors guy and camper and that kind of thing. I'm less on the survival side myself, but I do a lot of like backcountry camping where I bring in all the gear myself and that type of thing. But I'm a big gear guy. I don't like to just live with a few bare essentials. I like to obsess over gear and that type of thing. And originally when I was young, I had a huge fascination with like medieval culture and architecture and that type of thing. I was just obsessed with anything in that realm, and I actually thought I was going to be a blacksmith. That was what I wanted to do for a living, was be a professional blacksmith. And then I went complete 180 and ended up being a software developer. But yeah.
Still making stuff with your hands, I guess.
Kind of. I do still like to make stuff with my hands. Like I do some woodworking and that type of thing, but I'm a man of way too many hobbies and not enough time. That's for sure. Yeah,
I'm similar in that way. And actually, funny you say blacksmithing, because that is kind of what, it's a long story maybe for another podcast, but the blacksmithing is what got me into historical reenactment, because I did go and do like a forge experience with friends. As in, I dragged all my friends to come do it with me. I managed to convince them, because I was like, oh yeah, let's go, and like I want to try to forge my own knife. And there, of course, all the blacksmiths there, a lot of them were blacksmiths by day, but reenactors on weekends. And so they got me into reenactment, essentially.
Very cool. Yeah, I did a similar course, and I did some stuff at home as well when I was young. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to fool around with.
Well, it's so cool. Thanks for sharing, everyone. It's fun to get to know each other. And if the audience finds that interesting, then that's good too. That'll wrap it up for today, for this episode. Thanks to all of you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks again, and see you next week.
Yeah, it's always a good time. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. And yeah, looking forward to Friday, JSP Season 1 launch. It's going to be big.
Yes.
All right. And that's it for now. So have fun out there. Thank you for listening to Podheim, Jiroc's Valheim podcast. We have new episodes coming out every Friday, and if you enjoyed listening, please support us by subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform and leave us a rating and a review to help more Vikings find us. We also have a Patreon with perks for supporters like behind-the-scenes discussions, exclusive content, and segments that are edited out of the main podcast, and access to our Valheim gaming servers. If you would like to play on our Valheim servers, join our Discord. The link will be in the description of this episode along with the Patreon link. There you will find all the information you need to apply to our gaming servers. Thank you to Gwen the Shield Maiden, Jarl Tolkus, Rudistic the Guardian, and Thorin, aka Metaroon, for being part of this show. I'd like to give a huge shout out to my supporters, some of them on Patreon, the YouTube membership, and the ones who help boost our Discord server. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to make more videos, as well as run a community Discord and multiple Valheim gaming servers. If you enjoy my videos and would like to support my work, join our friendly Discord community and Valheim servers. Links can be found in the description below. Skål!